Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast. I'm Simon Chaskovsky here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we will be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you will want to hear about. This week we will finally be talking about the NFL's annual top 100 player rankings and everything they got so very wrong. Then we'll take a peek at some very early Stanley Cup odds, and depending on if we have time, we might just hit the NBA and MLB as well. So make sure to stick around, grab some snacks, get cozy, because knowing how controversial these top 100 lists generally get, we're probably going to be here for a while. Caleb, are you ready to get into it?
Absolutely. So, released about a week ago or so, as of today, we have the annual NFL Top 100 list. So, this is a big offseason story every year. Definitive ranking of the players by the players. So if there's any sort of list you'd want to pay attention to, it would be this one, just because theoretically the players who would know best, they're the ones who go up against these guys every Sunday. But there is always some controversial opinions that tend to go against the grain of what fans and media assume to be true when grading players. So we'll work our way through this list. We're going to be doing it. We're not going to go through every player individually, because that would be insane and turn this probably 40-minute segment into a 4-hour segment. But we will go through groups of 10 at a time. So we'll start at the bottom and kind of work our way up. We'll go players 91 to 100. Is there anything that jumps out to you there, Simon?
Not really. I feel like there's a couple names that kind of stick out to me just because they're the bigger names. You expect them to be a little higher. Like, part of me thinks Dalvin Cook should be higher, but maybe I'm wrong on that one. I'm personally not too sure. I also don't know if I like Devontae Smith at 100. I feel like he should be a little higher, but other than that, it's nothing too controversial. Like, Trevor Lawrence obviously had a really good second half of the year, so maybe you could make the argument that he should be a little higher as well. Pretty much all these guys, the only thing that I could possibly say about them is that a couple of them maybe should be higher. There's nothing that bad in these ones. This is probably the least 90 to 100 is going to be the least controversial one area, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would generally say so too. There are like a few surprises in here. The biggest one for me is Jamal Williams at 95. That feels very high. He had a really
That's
good
fair.
season last year. He played really well. But he still isn't like a feature back like the guy who's ranked 4 spots ahead of him. When you think of Dalvin Cook, you're thinking of a player who leads an offense and number one back. And Jamal Williams, even though he played really well last year, I don't know if I'm quite viewing him as that. So it's interesting that he got that high of a rating, and I'm wondering how much of that, just because it is the players ranking, like, he's a very likable guy. I wonder how much that played into it, because I don't know if the skill is quite there, but who knows? Maybe it's something we're not quite seeing.
Yeah, I definitely see what you mean. And in my head, I actually thought Dalvin Cook had like a way more down season. You might have to give me a second to pull up Jamal Williams' stats because I'm not too sure on that one. But I did pull up Dalvin Cook's. He's still at 1,173 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4.4 average. Not bad. That's a pretty solid season. Like, what I was gonna try and do, I'm trying to scan through this quickly and find who the next running back up is in this list. I think it's Aaron Jones, but I might be wrong. Yeah, I'm curious because I want to quickly compare those two, and I want to see if there's how big of a jump there is in stats there. Because, I don't know. I feel like Dalvin Cook is low.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
What are we looking
Yeah,
at?
that's... Okay, 1,121 yards, 5.3 average, so that is better. I think better yards, too. No, worse yards. And 2 touchdowns.
Aaron
Did he have
Jones
more,
only had
like,
2
receiving?
touchdowns.
He only had 2 touchdowns, which makes sense when you kind of think about the fact that he was sharing the backfield with A.J. Dillon.
Yeah.
But did he have receiving touchdowns or anything like that?
He had 5, I believe.
Okay. So, 1 less overall touchdown. Well, depending on how many receiving touchdowns Dalvin Cook had. But you know what I mean. We can dive into that all we want. We probably wouldn't get anywhere. That's, what is that? Aaron Jones is 64, Dalvin Cook is 91. That's a bit absurd.
Yeah.
I feel like Dalvin Cook could easily fit, like, around where Aaron Jones is, if not higher. I'd argue that he had a better season. I think it's just the fact that Dalvin Cook is a free agent right now, so maybe that had some sort of factor in it. And you could probably say the same thing about DeAndre Hopkins' spot. But, yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with you. Jamal Williams is a little high. I still have
although looking at his stats, I can convince myself of it a little bit more, of him being in that same conversation.
What did he have?
Do you know how many touchdowns he had? I forgot how many he had. It's kind of insane. So put into
Okay, well, I just looked it up. It up, but yeah, 17.
Yeah, 17. That's
a lot.
That is insane. I'm pretty sure that's a league leading. Again, I don't know how many of those were 1 yard brushes and how much, because touchdowns can be a pretty fickle stat. Also, looking that he was only the starter for 9 games, can you put a guy who's only a starter for half the season in the top 100 players? I don't really know.
I think you can when he has 17 touchdowns.
You can, but like
that's a lot of touchdowns.
How many of those touchdowns were just kind of gutting it out on the 1 yard line, and how much does that really take?
Fair.
He had it was a 1,000-yard season.
The better way to frame it, I think, is what running back that's missing from this list would you replace Jamal Williams with?
That's a good question.
Because I feel like that makes it a bit more interesting. Because, I mean, I'll quickly find the running backs above him. So it's Jamal Williams 95, Dalvin Cook 91, then it is Aaron Jones at 64, Tony Pollard at 55.
Ooh.
Yeah, we can get there when we get there. Christian McCaffrey at 35, Saquon at 31, and then we're gonna start to just get into all the names you'd already know. Oh, actually, never mind. There's only 2 more. Derrick Henry at 25 and Josh Jacobs at 12. So those are all the running backs on the list, I think.
Okay.
Unless I missed one. But, like, I don't, like... I know, like, the Seahawks fan in me wants to say, like...
Kenneth Walker.
Because I feel like he had a really solid rookie season, but...
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm thinking... I'm kind of leaning towards, like... I'm not angry about Jamal Williams getting in. Again, he's a great guy, and I think he had an amazing season last year. I just don't know how justified it is. Maybe not even putting it in terms of running backs who got left out, but just players who got left out. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf did not make this list, and that's kind of where I don't really know.
What were their stats like?
They're still Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Like, that's where you can't let
Tyler Lockett at 1,033 yards, 9 touchdowns. I'll look up Metcalf if you want to look up McLaren, because I know he's the last wide receiver, I think. And we can compare that.
McLaurin might also be a little bit low. He had almost 1,200 yards with 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So
well, the thing was DK only had 6 touchdowns. DK had a lower touchdown, his lowest since his rookie year.
Yeah.
So I think lower than his rookie year actually.
Yeah.
And his yards were a slight improvement from the year before, but not much. So I mean, I kind of understand him getting. Not quite making
for
it.
me, I think the fact that both are off the list, it just feels a little bit suspect when someone like Jamal Williams is getting on, because Lockett.
I think it's just a difference in position, though.
Yeah,
like there are a lot more talented wide receivers in the league than there are running backs, which is a conversation we had in our running back market segment. I think that's just. Although I know D-Hop had a down season as well.
Yeah, so, I don't. Even him getting in above.
Although he was out for a couple of weeks with a suspension, wasn't he?
I believe he was.
Or was that?
He only played. Yeah. He
played 9 games.
He still had pretty good stats in those 9 games, but.
700 yards, 9 games. That's pretty impressive.
The point you do make about there being more talented wide receivers, that shouldn't stop someone like DK getting in over someone like Jamal Williams, because it's not like there's a certain quota they have to fill. If there are receivers who contribute more to their team than running backs overall, there should be more receivers, and you can leave running backs off the list. Like, I'm thinking of a Lions team without Jamal Williams. How much worse would they be versus a Seahawks team without Tyler Lockett?
The way you were already mentioning how you kind of like are devaluing touchdowns with that, but I feel like you have to involve that in the conversation. If you take by the way, I'm not making the argument that Jamal Williams is actually a better player than Metcalf. I will not make that argument here. But you're taking 17 touchdowns off the season for the Lions when you take Williams out. You're taking 6 off for the Seahawks. Right?
Yeah, but I think
and then the yards are about even.
I think that is different.
I know it is different. But I just feel like the more I think about it, the more I feel like Jamal Williams can keep a spot. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm looking at all of the. I have a highlight pack open of all 17 Jamal Williams rushing touchdowns. This one is from the 1. This next one is from the 1. This next one is from the 1. This next one is from the 1. This one is a longer run. This is against the Seahawks, fittingly enough. 50-yard run against the Seahawks. That one's from the 5. Like, this one's from the 1. This one's from the 1. That one's from the 4. A lot of these are just, like, punching it in the red zone. And, like, respect to him for getting it done. As a Seahawks fan, I, more than anybody, knows that scoring from the 1-yard line isn't a guarantee. However, I don't think that alone, even when it is such as an insane number as 17, should put him above other players who are overall contributing more to the team, because I don't think you can just look at touchdowns, because if you say, but if you take Jamal Williams off the Lions, you take away 17 touchdowns, that's not necessarily true. Maybe you even sub in Jared Goff to run a QB sneak and he could do the same thing. Like, you can find other ways to get those points. I just don't think he's as valuable to the Lions as a Lockett or a Metcalf or I don't have a list of like snubs off the top of my head. As a Seahawks fan, those are my most obvious.
But the thing is, this isn't a list of most valuable players. This is a list of best players from last season going into this season, right? That's the difference with that. Because if it was most valuable players, Metcalf would probably be a lot. He would crack the 100 and he would be a lot above it because he still has a lot of potential that he can fill, right? I think I don't know. I think just if we're talking only looking at the last season, which I think based on a lot of the rankings on here is definitely the case, we're only looking at last season. I think I wouldn't snub Jamal Williams. It's hard to snub a guy who had 17 touchdowns, even if all of them were from the 1. It's still 17 touchdowns. That's a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, I get.
I feel like we could argue about this forever. We should probably get into 80.
We can move on.
Yeah, we should probably get into 80. Okay.
I'll just say.
Is there? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I'll just say to end this conversation and kind of like transition this into the next one. I think it is an interesting point to say what the difference between most valuable to their team is and overall best. Like, that's an interesting distinction to make because it is talking about overall best, but I feel like if a player is more valuable to their team and plays a more valuable role and overall does more, I feel like that generally makes them better, which is why I do think you have to take position a little bit into account. It's such a tough, because football is like, it's hard to compare a safety.
If you're gonna do that though, if you're doing that, wouldn't you like the entire top 20 probably just be quarterbacks?
That's true, and that's why like I do think this list is flawed.
Yeah, like because that's why it's such a tough argument. Yeah, because you can't bring value into it. You just have to look at it from the perspective of like you're ranking, because there's no way to like really show the value of a sack or an interception versus a touchdown or yards or whatever or breakups. There's no metric to that, right? So you are basically putting skill into, you're putting overall value of one season of all of these players and just throwing it out there and just seeing what you can get. And with that in mind, I was mentioning this to you before. I actually don't think they did that bad of a job, but there are definitely a couple in here where it's like...
No, it's definitely not awful, and I do think that, like, you bring up good points, and I do think that's where this list is flawed, just in concept, because I don't know how you compare, like I was saying, like, a safety to an offensive tackle. Like, they do very different things. It's very difficult to judge those two, and, like, in terms of value, yeah.
Well, the thing is, one thing that I have been hearing is, I know there are some people who are mad about the lack of offensive linemen on this list, and I definitely kind of agree with that, just kind of scanning through it. It feels like there should be more, because there are definitely a lot more quality offensive linemen than... I feel like there's only, like, when I was counting through it, I thought I got, like, maybe 6 or 7, Are you telling me there's only 6 or 7 linemen in the league who are in the top 100? That feels really weird.
It's really tough to justify. Just because,
Yeah.
like, the highest rated offensive lineman is 14 in Trent Williams, but after that, it's a pretty barren spot because you have to go to 37 with Jason Kelsey to find the next one.
And then the one that I really want to point out, actually, you know what? We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah,
we should stick to where we're at.
We'll move on.
There is one that does piss me off a lot, but we'll move on to 80. There's a whole new 10 names. Is there any of them that stick out to you, piss you off, make you happy, whatever?
Yeah, I don't really I'm not too upset about any of these. Justin Fields, it's nice to see him crack the top 100. I think he's pretty well situated where he's at. He's not a world breaker yet, but I do think, like I talked about before, he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. So it's nice to see him get that recognition. Aiden Hutchinson, cool to see him make it in his first year. Tua is rated a little bit high, but I'm not going to be too upset. I am a Tua appreciator, so 82, maybe a little high. Maybe would have had him maybe out of the top 100, maybe in the last 10, but it's fine where he is. Other than that, I'm not too upset about any of these picks. They're all pretty chalky, I feel like.
Yep. No, I definitely agree with you. I think I was pretty much going to touch on the same things. I think Justin Fields is pretty good spot for him. I don't know. I'm okay with Tua at 82. You said that you think it's a little high. I don't know where else I'd move him because I would say that Tua is probably right now. I mean, okay, I'm just going to keep on looking up stats if we let me do this. But what's Tua look like compared to, like, Trevor Lawrence? Because I think that's an interesting conversation to have. Because he had 25 touchdowns, 8 picks. Trevor Lawrence had... Or with 3,500 yards.
25
Trevor
touchdowns,
Lawrence,
8 picks.
Yeah, that's Tua. Same thing.
Is it literally the same?
God.
Wow.
Tua had a way better rating. That's the one thing that sticks out to me when I look at it.
It's Tua's completion.
Lawrence had about 500 more yards though. Well, Trevor Lawrence also had a really good completion. What brought down his rating?
Is it? It's not interceptions.
Was it like sacks?
Shouldn't be.
Yeah, I don't feel like it would affect it that much.
He has more yards. Yeah, I don't really know. QB rating is such a fickle stat.
It is, but there are still things that go into it. Like a 10-point difference, that's especially when their stats are so similar.
Yeah.
That's not right. Like, I actually want to dig into that a little. I want to figure out why that is.
Yeah,
it's
curious.
He got sacked 27 times. I'm actually diving into this. Give me a second. Because that's the one thing that's in my head makes sense. Past... One second. Where are sacks? I don't even know if that goes into QB rating now that I think about it. No, pretty much the same. 21. What did I say for Trevor Lawrence? 27? That's probably not enough to do that big of a difference. That doesn't make any sense to me. I guess by that logic, Trevor Lawrence should be higher. If you want to make the argument that Tua's 82. But
yeah,
I wouldn't be mad about moving Trevor Lawrence up either. I like where Tua is. I like him in that.
Yeah, I'm convincing myself a little bit more just because the other thing, it is a little bit, obviously football's a team game. But
yeah,
looking at stats overall, the Dolphins with Tua went 8-5 and without went 1-3.
Yeah.
That feels like it's a pretty decent
and you can't
size.
And I don't think you can make the argument that Tua got carried either. Like, even if he had one of the best receivers in the league in Tyreek Hill, he had a very, very good squad all around him. I don't think that's why he was winning. And I mean, that's what you were just saying. But I just think that I don't know. You said that you like to give you're a Tua appreciator. I can definitely say the same. I do really like Tua. And he's one of those guys where, like, every single season he gets a little better. You know what I mean? I think we could see him move up this list this season.
I do.
But there are also, you could say the same thing about Lawrence, you could say the same thing about Fields, you could say the same thing about a couple of guys above him. Like, there's a lot of young guys. That's the one nice thing. There is a really good influx of young quarterbacks, players all across the league who have a chance to move up this list, which is just great to see. I think we're going into a season that's going to be really fun this year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you are. I'm ready to move into the 70s if you want to.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well,
The 70s may have
I know
some.
there is. Yeah, 70s. There are a couple in here. One really big one that sticks out to me. I don't know if you want to start with that or if you want to start with something of your own. It's up to you.
Okay. So I'm looking at this, and I have a few. First of all, pair of Seahawks. Obviously, I'll get those out of the way first. Geno's ranking in a vacuum is not bad. I am glad that he's getting...
And just to be clear, Geno is a 77.
Geno
so
is 77. And that is, in a vacuum, that is not bad. I will hold my tongue on why I say in a vacuum until we get to the 60s.
Yeah.
Tariq Woolen.
Yep.
I
Well-
will say... I don't know if you want to talk about that
No.
now, but I feel like I can hold my tongue.
No, there's another name that I want to talk about as well in the 70s, but we can...
Yeah, I have
Well,
multiple.
I'll bring it back to it. You go ahead.
So, I am over like Tariq Woolen at 76. Honestly, that's a really good ranking for him. I do think this amount of separation.
There's one reason that I really don't like that. Are you going to bring up Sauce Gardner?
Yes, I am going to bring up Sauce Gardner.
Yeah,
Sauce
okay.
Gardner
Because
is the
that's
top-ranked
pissed me
quarterback
off
in the
all
league.
off season.
Yeah, it's like Sauce Gardner is very good. Do not get me wrong. Sauce Gardner is awesome. But if you
But when you
look at-
actually look at the stats, yeah,
And look
it's
at the film,
really close.
it shouldn't be as much of a discrepancy between the two, because again, the argument is whereas Sauce is essentially there's the argument to be made that Sauce is playing a little bit aggressively and should maybe get a little bit more pass interference calls than he does. He also doesn't make plays on the ball like Tariq can. He can't with Tariq, I just think of the play against the Lions where there's some receivers that can make themselves open. Tariq is the only cornerback that I think I've ever seen where he can make receivers not open. Like a receiver will be open when they throw it, and just because of how fast he is,
Yeah,
watch
he's
that
quick as
Lions
hell.
play. That is not a bad throw.
He's a big guy too.
Yeah, that's not
He's
a
a
bad
big guy,
throw from
too.
Jared Goff on that play. It's just Tariq Woolen is too good, and he erases separation.
And to be honest with you, I feel like I don't know. I don't think Sauce Gardner should be the number one corner in the league.
No.
I don't know if that's controversial.
I don't think so either.
I feel like I know this isn't the argument you're making. I definitely would not move crap, all of a sudden I'm blanking on names. Tariq Woolen all the way up the list to where Sauce is.
no.
I feel like I'd have them meet somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think that I think Sauce is too high. I think Tariq is too low. I think that's just the end. That's
Yeah.
it. That's the end of the story. I think they should be right next to each other, just with how close their stats were. I
Yeah.
think Tariq had more interceptions and Sauce had more of something else.
Pass
I don't
breakups,
remember. It's been
yeah.
a long time since I've yeah, that's what it was. It was just it's a coin flip. It depends on what you value more in a corner, right? It's also a difference in system because obviously the Seahawks play a lot more zone and stuff like that. It's a difference of situation and a whole lot of stuff like that. I mean, it's just such a big gap for really two corners that should be a lot closer.
Yeah, and the players I'm seeing above, I'm honestly not mad. The fact that Tariq Woolen is getting ahead of established veterans like Marshawn Lattimore and Marlon Humphrey, that's impressive and great for his first year. But Sauce should not be number one above guys like Jair Alexander and Patrick Surtain. That's kind of the point I'm making. I agree with you. I think I wouldn't even be mad.
He could be at the end of this season. He very well could be.
Oh, I think so
But
too.
I also think that Tariq is going to rise up that list as well. I think it's going to be
with Witherspoon.
That's again. We're just going back to the. What do you say?
With Witherspoon there, I think Tariq's going to look even better next year.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you. I think that we're going to see. I think that they're kind of preparing, at least with Sauce, for him to have a ridiculous season. They're not, and that's kind of the bias that I don't like. I don't like that because they're not with Sauce. They're not necessarily putting him there because of what he did last season. and sure, he had an incredible season as well. I'm not trying to devalue that at all. I'm just trying to say that I feel like they are putting him more there with the expectation that he'll pass Jair Alexander, which whether he will or not, that shouldn't be why he's there. He should be there because he had a better season than Jair Alexander and is a better player, which you would have a very hard time convincing me of.
Yeah, he had an amazing rookie season, but is it really the kind of season where you're saying he's better than people who have been the established top cornerbacks in the league for multiple years? He had two interceptions. He had only 2 interceptions. I don't know if that's good enough to get the job done. If interceptions can, again, be one of those fickle stats like touchdowns, fair to make that argument where it's a lot about opportunity. Like, I'm thinking of the Tariq
Well, and that's again going back to what I said about I think we've just seen in the last couple of years that, like, corners who are constantly put into more, like, zone coverage, I feel like they just have a better chance of picking off interceptions. At least that's been something that I've kind of noticed because we saw that with the Cowboys and we saw that with Diggs in I think that was the year before, where they used him in a lot of zone and he was able to take advantage of it. And I feel like maybe that could have been a factor with Woolen, and maybe he wouldn't have done as well in a more man defense system. But I feel like at that point you're just poking, right? Like, who knows if that's even a factor at that point, right? Yeah. Who maybe Sauce would have had more picks in the Seahawks system if you swapped him.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? Yeah. Like, I think with that kind of thing, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like if they were much closer, I would have zero issue with, even if you still put Sauce above Woolen, I wouldn't have an issue with it. I just feel like the gap there is ridiculous.
I agree.
It's too much.
If putting Sauce above Woolen is not my issue, it's the amount of difference that they're saying. Because there's not...
It should be like, they should be in the same 10.
Yeah, I think they should too.
I'd say that.
All right.
I think that if I were to throw him anywhere, looking at the other corners on this list, I would probably throw him in the 40s. Maybe 30s. No, I'd throw him in the 40s.
I'd put them both in the, like, 50s, honestly. I'd say above Diggs and Slay, but below Surtain, Ramsey, and Alexander.
Oh, okay. Wait, where is Ramsey?
Ranking. Ramsey's 36.
I lost Ramsey.
Ramsey's
okay,
36.
Yeah, no, I did see Surtain. I was thinking I'd maybe slide him, like...
Surtain is a better player than...
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay. That's okay. I don't know. I feel like it's not that. They're not far off though. Yeah. Like, I feel like I'd slide them. What I mean when I say 40s is I'd slide them around. I saw Surtain and I was like, okay, that's a good benchmark. I'd throw them around there.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking in my head. But I think we should move on because there's a lot of things in here that we could probably spend 10 minutes each talking about. We've already spent 30 minutes and we're still in the 70s. Yeah. So we should probably
move on.
We should probably speed up. One thing I did really, really want to hit though while we're still in the 70s, Lamar Jackson at 72 is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life.
That's terrible.
That's what I wanted to start off with because I feel like you can make all the arguments. Obviously, we're going to go into 60s of which quarterback is at 66 and why that is the stupidest thing ever. But the fact that you're putting Lamar at 72 when you look at who's above him and how far above them, holy crap.
Yeah.
Who did that? Who seriously thought to themselves that, okay, you know what, spoiler, I'm just going to throw it out there. Who seriously thought to themselves that I would rather have Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins than Lamar Jackson? Like, I don't even think Lamar had that bad of a season, did he? I thought he had a pretty decent season.
The one issue with, and I think this is the reason why, the one issue with Lamar's season was that he was injured for a decent chunk of it. He did not play the entire season. That's fair.
But how much of the season did he play? Before I say something stupid.
He played 12 games. Yeah. 8 and 4.
17 touchdowns, 7 picks, 2,200 yards. What was his rushing like? 764 yards in 12 games. It's not bad. That's pretty damn impressive. Yeah. Although that's the same, he also only played 12 games in 2021. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's it's
maybe I'm putting my foot in my mouth then by
it's a stupid
being so mad about it, but
it is I don't know, ludicrously stupid ranking if you take it out of the context that it is only this year. I still wouldn't. With that being said, I do still think it's stupid, and I completely agree with you. I do think the placement of Jared Goff on this list. We'll move into the '60s with this because
Yeah, we should. Yeah, that's a good segue.
It's really my only gripe with the '60s. Bobby Wagner, as much as I love him, it's a little high. Deebo Samuel is too high.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones is too high. Amon-Ra
How good did Deebo Samuel do?
He had a down year. He was not quite.
Oh, right, I had him in fantasy. I knew that.
He is not quite as good as he was before, and frankly, I think he was overrated before. Maybe that's just my Seahawks fan talking. But for time, I'll.
No, he definitely. I don't think he was overrated. I think that might be your Seahawks talking. I think he was pretty good at one point. But,
I don't know. With the amount of Niners fans I see lapping him up as one of the best receivers in the league, I don't quite think that's true. I think.
What do you think of?
I think Shanahan's system gives him a lot more. If he played anywhere else, I don't think he would be quite as good as he is.
Yeah, no,
I think that's
definitely true.
It's more credit to the coach than anything else in terms of all the creative ways that they use him. I think they use him very well, and they know exactly what his skill set is, and they use him in a great way.
What do you think of moving away from there? Because I want to start running through names here. What do you think of Trevon Diggs at 60?
I think it's high.
I think it's high. I was kind of thinking that too. You see, the reason that he was so insanely hyped last season was the 11 interceptions, right? That was like the big outlier that stuck out. And then this season, he only had 3.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm just missing something. Maybe I need to dive into like the more advanced stats to like fully understand why he is where he is. But I don't know. Considering like the season before, I know almost his entire value were those interceptions. Like as an overall coverage corner, I knew he was pretty overrated. That was a very big conversation this season before. I don't know. I don't know enough to know whether he necessarily improved on that or not. But I know that 3 interceptions. Obviously, he wasn't going to repeat 11. No shit. But I feel like I think I at least thought he'd be a little closer.
Yeah. I think he's a little high for where he is. It's interesting that he's still this high, just in terms of like, maybe because again it's the players' rankings. Maybe he wasn't as overrated as people would have said he was. But again, his stats are not nearly as good, not just in interceptions, but in pass breakups.
They're just not. They're not.
15.
Yeah, they're not very impressive.
More tackles, but not by much. Still made it to the Pro Bowl, but again, not the same. I think it's an interesting spot for him. I'm not mad about him being in the top 100 at all. Like I think that's deserved.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I just think
60 is.
I thought when I saw him at 60, I was like, I don't know about that.
Like above Woolen and again the names I mentioned like Slay, Lattimore, Humphrey. That feels a little bit.
I feel like you can move Diggs down further. But other than that, I think we already talked about Jared Goff. I don't feel like I feel like we can move on.
No.
Can we move on before the rant?
Man, I always postpone my Jared Goff.
I keep robbing you of your Jared Goff rant. I'm sure when he throws 4 picks in week 1
Can we have a segment next week that's just my Jared Goff rant? Or I'll end the podcast with my Jared Goff rant. I'll make a special request for next week, Jared Goff rant.
Next week. You know what? Considering how dry the offseason is, I feel like we could get away with it. Just having a rant. Although, you know what? Better idea. Next week, we will do a segment on, because we did one about the Patriots. We'll do more of a team focused on the Lions, and I'll give you your Jared Goff rant when we get to it. We'll do a Lions segment. Put that down. We'll do it.
It'll be
fun.
I will leave the Jared Goff thing saying that I think it is absolutely absurd that he is ahead of Geno and Lamar. I think that's dumb. Yeah. I think he's a system quarterback, and I will talk about it more next week.
Okay, and then we can move on into the 50s, where I'm quickly scanning and see if there's anything that really pisses me off about it. I kind of mentioned this one to you right away. I know your opinion on this because I know you do not like A-Rod, but I feel like A-Rod should be a little higher. I think 51 is a little bit of a disservice. I know obviously his personality can be a bit abrasive. Is the word that I would probably use, but I think he's still a very talented quarterback. I know he did have a down year last year, but having even after one down year, and I know we keep going back to the thing of like how it's supposed to only be one season, but God, he won back-to-back MVPs and we're putting him at 51 after like, and didn't he? How many touchdowns did he have this season?
20.
I keep going back to the stats.
He had 26, but Simon.
Yeah.
Simon.
Yeah.
A-Rod had the most interceptions since his very first year starting in 2008. Aaron Rodgers threw 12 interceptions, which, again, when I'm thinking of quarterbacks...
12 interceptions is not... yeah, that's not... Again, I mean, that's a lot for A-Rod, obviously. First time hitting double digits since 2010, but still...
It's not terrible, but again, we were looking at players who had significantly less in the 90s. We're looking at Trevor Lawrence. We're looking at Tua... Players who had a lot less interceptions and also are less experienced. I do think we're starting to see the decline of Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying...
I can say the only reason that I find it weird is the fact that, like, you just, like... It's so weird, the fact that he went from winning 2 MVPs and now he's at 50. It's just... I don't know. It's. I know it's just the bias of the fact of how good his previous 2 seasons were. Like, that in my head, I feel like I still would put him on the pedestal of, like, the better quarterbacks in the league, even if he did decline. I don't know. Like, if we are talking on the thing of just, like, we are looking at just the last season, I totally agree with you. I think, I don't know. I feel like if we actually get into this, we'd be arguing about it forever. That's the issue, though. So I don't know how much I actually want to. I feel like I think it just depends on where your stance is on how important the previous seasons were. Because one thing that I liked that I saw a different media source using was, and I kind of thought about if we run out of things like to talk about in the offseason, I think that this would be a pretty interesting one. I don't know if you follow Puck Empire on Instagram, but they've been doing hockey like top 100, copying the NFL one. But what they've been doing is instead of just doing the one season, they're taking the last 3 seasons. Like they full out came out and said, we are taking the last 3 seasons into like whatever word you want to use. My brain's tired. They are taking the last 3 seasons, mushing them all together, and seeing what you get. I feel like you could probably get a much better list even with the NFL if you did that. Just on the, I don't know. Maybe I guess the NFL though is a lot shorter of primes than the NHL is, so maybe not.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that you make the argument that you have to, it's like, oh, he's won 2 straight MVPs. But that's the thing about this list. Yeah. It's why Lamar Jackson is so low. It's why Sauce Gardner is so high. It is literally just last season. That is all they care about in terms of this. I mean, obviously legacy's going to play into it some part, but it is top 100 players of 2022, technically. And just putting it out there, Aaron Rodgers did not play as well as he did those last 2 seasons. So, honestly, he did not. No,
I would not try and make that argument.
Because he had 12 picks. He had a losing record. Again, he threw for less yards than he has since, discluding the season he got injured, since 2013, in which he also played 9 games. Again, it's just like looking at it to the rest of his career, that season was not the same A-Rod he was before. And I think it will be interesting to see him play with the Jets because supporting cast does go into it. Receiving corps on the Packers is pretty barren.
I think he's not gonna have an MVP season. I think he's gonna have a bounce back.
I do think he might have a bounce back season. I think
he'll hit 30 touchdowns.
I think 50 is fair. Yeah. I'm not.
Yeah.
If you want to say like, oh, we should put him above Kirk Cousins, yeah, sure. Let's do that again. Our top quarterback ranking.
That is the argument I was gonna make. Yeah, Kirk Cousins is weird to me.
I just think.
Although I know that Kirk Cousins did have a good season this year, so 1 second, let's compare stats between Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers. Isn't that a sentence I never thought I'd be saying?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, okay. Kirk Cousins. Okay.
It's supporting
29
pass,
touchdowns, 14 picks.
One of them has Justin Jefferson and one of them doesn't.
Yeah, very true. But How many did you say? 26. So that's 3 more touchdowns, 2 more picks. Where I don't know where you land on that, but
Yeah,
I feel
I would put,
I
I would this season.
think that's a little interchangeable.
I do think putting Cousins above Rodgers is a little bit much, but I'm not like upset about it. I think 50 is the
Yeah,
right
looking
spot
at the
for
stats,
Rodgers in a vacuum.
I was even thinking that.
Yeah. With
Yeah,
that, with
I'm
the
not mad
Kirk
about
talk,
it
do you want to move into the 40s?
Yes, I absolutely do. We should there's not really anything that I necessarily hate. I don't know about you. I mean, we just kind of touched on Kirk Cousins. That's the one that was kind of sticking out to me earlier, but after actually looking at his stats, I'm not too mad about it.
No, I'm not too mad about Kirk Cousins. I'll give a few like notable ones. Quinnen Williams at 40. He's been pretty obviously drafted high, but he's been pretty unheralded. Like you don't see him being talked about too much. So I think him being that high is a testament to how well he's actually played. Like he's been a good player. I just don't think a lot of people have noticed. Demario Davis being that
I think
high,
a lot of people will notice this season now on the Jets because obviously they're going to get a lot more prime time
this
games.
is true. I think he should show up a lot more. The other one is Demario Davis. Shout out to my good friend Kian, my Saints fan friend. He'd be very happy with that ranking, and I think it is well deserved. He's been a stalwart for them at middle.
He's been very solid in the last couple of years.
He's very good, and it's good to see him getting his due. Cooper Kupp at 47, where he should be. Him getting top receiver hype is absolutely absurd. I hate him even more than Jared Goff. We can maybe throw in a Cooper Kupp rant at some point this summer if we're looking for. I think he again doesn't
a time pad.
doesn't do anything special. He's just kind of average and was elevated by his quarterback play.
The only reason that I love Cooper Kupp is it wasn't last year, it was the year before that I had him in fantasy football, and he was my best friend for that season.
Yeah, that's also part of why I hate him, because I also had to play against him.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, like Cooper Kupp did not play the
year
because he was injured. But I just
Cooper Kupp's another guy with because I think the Stafford also got hurt last season, so there's a lot of moving gears in the Rams. I think Kupp could potentially, even as much as you may hate him, I think there's a chance he probably does move up if the injuries there stays a little bit. I think there's just so many. There were so many things that went wrong with the Rams last season that, like, knock on wood, but probably won't happen again. Hopefully won't happen again. Nobody likes to see injuries.
I'm hoping it. Oh well, I don't want to see injuries.
Okay. Yeah, don't say that. But maybe don't wish for injuries on the internet.
I don't want to see injuries. I want the entire Rams roster to stay healthy. They have great players. But I am all for the Rams' downfall. I want a fully healthy Rams roster.
You just want them
to straight up suck.
You just want like Will Ferrell to buy them like drinks the night before the game, every single game.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, like
I want a fully.
You want them to
Rams
all get the
suck.
Lawrence Taylor treatment for like every single game before the entire season. Yes. That's what you want. Yes. So they suck. Yeah.
Yes, I want the Rams to suck.
Well, we can move on past that. Like we don't need. But going into the 30s, there was one that I found that I was going to point out before I actually looked into the stats of it, and this is totally just based on the hype behind one of them, and there's still a little hype around the other, but, I mean, lesser, I'd say. Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb. I found when I was my initial reaction to seeing that, I immediately was like, there's no way. There's no way. And then I like looked into it a bit more and looked at the stats. I don't have them pulled up, but I know CeeDee Lamb did have quite a bit more. I think maybe like 100 more yards, if I'm remembering right. And I think they had the same amount of touchdowns. So he did have a better season. But I'm curious what you think on that.
I do think that Jamar Chase should be higher. I just think when I am going into a game and game planning against a team, which one am I more worried about?
Yeah.
That's the
way that I looked at it too. Yeah.
Because Jamar Chase breaks open games. Like, I'm thinking of him against the Chiefs. I know this wasn't but
we should immediately open with that if you're going to point out that though. They are two very different types of receivers.
They are.
Like that is, you're looking at a guy like CeeDee Lamb is, at least in my opinion, is a lot more of like he's going to route you up, he's going to beat you like to the step, that type of receiver. While Jamar Chase is a lot more of a, he's gonna moss you and he's gonna kill your entire offense. That's the difference.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see more receiving stats. I don't know if they have like yak numbers, but
Yeah.
I do think it's an interesting comparison to make. I do think again Jamar Chase not playing the full season may have been part of what hurt him. But the fact
True.
is they had very similar stats when Jamar Chase played 5 less games. I do think that says a lot.
Yeah.
I do think.
Other than that, though, I think that is the only thing that I really have an issue with here.
In the 30s,
I think
the one thing I would point out,
I think,
is that everything feels about right. Matt Judon is a little high. That is a surprising place for Matt Judon to go. I didn't
that
think
stuck
he
out
was
to
a
me
world
too.
record.
But I always think of him as like a very underrated linebacker, just in general. So that's why I don't necessarily have an issue with him being there.
Yeah, and he had a break.
I don't
he had
know,
a,
though.
He had the best year of his career. He had 15 and a half sacks.
Okay, never mind. I take it back. He deserves to be there. 15 and a half is a hell of a season.
It is a hell of a season.
I
think that just speaks to how
I-
under the radar he goes, honestly, because the fact
That's what I mean. Like I've always thought of him, at least for the last couple seasons, as being very underrated. So when I saw him there, even though I didn't have his stats right in front of me, it was believable. You know what I mean? Like, because there are some names when you see them super high on the list that you immediately go, I don't know about that one. For example, CeeDee Lamb. Like I said, I did not know that he had that good of a season. Maybe it's just because I'm a Cowboys hater. Who knows? But there's just a couple names out there that when I see them, I'm just like, I don't know. Judon was believable for me. I even before seeing his stats, 33, I didn't really have an issue with it.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, I don't know if my gut feeling was that 30 is a little bit too high, but looking at stats, it is. I don't know why there isn't more attention given to him, and I do think that's one of the nice things about the top 100 is players can pay their dues to the players who get a little bit less respect than they should, and I think Matt Judon is a good example of that. 33 again feels a little bit rich, but overall I don't think it's something that sticks out, but like you said, is justifiable.
Yeah, totally. And are you good to move on to the 20s, or is there anyone else you want to talk about here? You are?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we can slide right over into the 20s. Obviously, we already talked on Sauce Gardner, so I don't know if we necessarily need to bring that one up
I think
again.
we're good with that.
But the one thing that I find really, you know what? I'll wait to talk. I'll wait to talk on that one until we get into the teens. But I mean, the weird thing is I don't know if I'm necessarily mad at any of these either. I think it's all I see is a ton of elite players at a bunch of different positions where it's just hard to pick one over the other. Like, because the funny thing is like because how are you going? Like I mentioned this earlier, but how do you pick an interception over a sack, or like a touchdown over an interception, or whatever, what have you, right? Like that's such a hard. There's no metric for that, so it's so hard to rank different positions in different places. To the point where I look at this and I'm just like, sure. I don't know. I just don't feel like I would. I don't have enough of an issue with any of these to necessarily move them around, other than Sauce Gardner, but we already talked about that.
Yeah, the one that I'm intrigued by, Austin Eckler is very high. That's not the one I'm intrigued by. But that's very high.
The thing that I was gonna mention is I feel like we could probably wait to talk about the running backs until we get to the teens, because Josh Jacobs is at 12 there, and I feel like we can just talk about the running back rankings as a whole when we get there, because I want to hear what your opinion on that is. But so I don't know if you want to save that for that.
Yeah, okay,
if you want to take it now, go nuts.
We can save that. My other
okay. Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about there?
My other one is everything else looks fine. Roquan Smith is another one of those names. It feels very similar to a Matt Judon situation, where it feels a little bit out of place looking initially, but I'm looking at it as a whole, and I'm looking at how much playing for Baltimore did for him, getting traded to Baltimore, because he's kind of stuck on, obviously not in his first couple years of his career, because that Chicago defense was good, but...
And just to be clear, I think he played a little bit of outside linebacker this season, so maybe I'm gonna step on my tongue again, but I think he is the highest rated inside linebacker, if I am not wrong. I think.
I think you're right.
Yeah, because
Fred Warner.
I swear that
Fred Warner.
Oh, right. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
fair.
I'm wrong. Never mind. So number 2, inside linebacker. Do you have any issue with that?
Not really. Not really.
Because again, that just comes back to the whole thing of who would you put above him.
Yeah,
Like,
honestly,
who
in
would
terms
go
of
number 2
linebackers, I don't think
otherwise?
I would. I do think I'm not upset, but I'm not upset by it. Honestly, I do think it feels a little bit rich just on a gut instinct, but like looking at underlying stats, like it feels like it's well deserved. One thing I would want to point out, I'd be interested to see how he does a full season in Baltimore, just because, again, take this with a grain of salt because I don't know how they get this number, but I'm looking at Pro Football Reference and they have a approximate value that they calculate to determine a player's overall value to their team throughout the season. Now, in 2022, Roquan Smith played for the Bears and the Ravens. With 8 games with the Bears, he had an approximate value of 4. In 9 games with the Ravens, he had an approximate value of 13, which is a
Holy
huge
smokes.
jump. It is a huge jump. A lot of the players that we
That
looked
is a
at
huge jump.
had approximate values. I'll go back through. Jamar Chase, approximate value 11. Matt Judon, 13. You can go back and look through other players. 13 is an insanely high number. To have that high of a jump from what is like a league average player kind of rating to a superstar rating in terms of approximate value. The overall stats are about the same, but that the underlying value that they have to calculate into that.
That's really interesting.
I think it is. Again, it's a kind of stat you take with a grain of salt, but I think it's something that is interesting to see how he can maybe put his name out there to match that 24th best player in the league kind of description.
Yeah.
To see if being in a better situation does that for him.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to move into the teens?
Yeah, let's do it.
So that we can talk about all the... Because this is when it starts to get a bit more interesting, I think. I think if you want to start with the running backs, like I said, at number 12, we can do that. We can move right into Josh Jacobs.
Okay.
Because I think he overall did, when I was looking at it earlier, I think I saw that he did overall have like the best running back season stats-wise. So I guess I don't have an issue with him being ranked number 1. But do you think that the gap between him and the other running backs on this list, like the next 2 in Austin Eckler and Derrick Henry, is necessarily deserving, or what do you think on that?
It's just like it does feel like Josh Jacobs is not best running back in the league material yet. He had the best stats, sure, but he doesn't yet feel like a game breaker. He feels like a Nick Chubb kind of player, which is no disrespect because Nick Chubb is amazing. But he's not the kind of player.
Nick Chubb is still a level. He's still a 29. Like that's still arguably a compliment.
It is a compliment, but I don't think they're at the type where you're having to. It's again one of those things when you talk about running back contracts. Like there's very few franchise running backs. I would say Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley. Talent wise, I don't know if he's quite there. So it does feel a little bit rich, even to put him above a guy like Austin Eckler, who, again, even Austin Eckler seems high, but Austin Eckler has the dual threat capability, as anyone who's had him in fantasy knows. That's why he's going as like RB1 in fantasy, is because of his receiving capabilities. So I do think it's interesting. He's very much more of a traditional back in that he just kind of runs downhill and picks up yards. He doesn't have a whole lot outside of that. He's not mauling defender souls like Derrick Henry is. He's not providing that dual threat ability like an Eckler or McCaffrey does. He doesn't have the god tier shape shifting ability that Saquon Barkley has. He is just kind of a downhill runner like Nick Chubb is. He's very good at it. 12 feels rich for that kind. It just doesn't feel like... It's no disrespect because that style works, but 12 feels a little bit rich just when he doesn't have that special quality to him. It's not anything that I'm too mad about. It's not like a Jared Goff at 60 where I'm going to be upset. But it just feels a little bit rich.
Yep, and you hit on everything that I was pretty much about to say. That's why I wanted to let you go first. I thought you'd have more to say on that one. But yeah, I definitely agree. I just think there's... I don't know what to add that you didn't already say. But I think it should be a thinner gap, if that makes sense. Like, that's just the main thing I wanted to touch on. I feel like Josh Jacobs, I don't have an issue with them necessarily putting, just because of the season he had, I don't have an issue with them putting him above the people they did. I just think that maybe put him like late teens. I think then I wouldn't have even said anything about it. Past that, I think I would have been fine with it. But is there anything else you want to touch on in the teens, or do you want to try and beat an hour here?
We will talk. There's the everything else is okay. I'm looking at everything. Shout out to Fred Warner, Max Crosby. You don't get as much. We'll throw Minka Fitzpatrick in there. They don't get as much praise.
I feel like Fred Warner gets quite a bit of credit. I think everybody knows he's probably the best inside linebacker in the league. No, it didn't. Did we lose everything? Okay, I'm just going to explain what happened so that I can actually use this. Okay, Caleb's phone died. He was recording with his phone. So he is gone. I'm replacing him with a photo of him that looks very stupid because he is stupid. So, I know, Caleb, I am your voice. What is controversial about the top 10? Just name it. Controversial about the top 10. Oh, okay, we already mentioned, Nick Bosa is dumb. Nick Bosa shouldn't be 4. That's a little high for him. Other than that, I thought Jalen Hurts, him being at 3 above Joe Burrow and Josh Allen was a little high. That's a little bit too much recency bias. Caleb just agreed with me. Other than that, the rest of the list I don't have an issue with. I think the rest of the list is fine. We're going to do the one cardinal sin that I think every single creator around any sport ever always does when the offseason is boring. And that is throw out an incredibly stupid prediction about who is going to win the Stanley Cup, Super Bowl, whatever, what have you, right? It is, although as stupid as it might be, it is the most fun thing to always look back on, and I can't wait to look back on it come next June. So let's hop right into it. We have some early Stanley Cup odds in front of us right now, and I don't even know how to necessarily go about starting this one, but Caleb, is there anything that sticks out to you? I guess we can just start with that. See if there's anything, because there's a couple. There's a couple here for me, but I'll see if there's anything that hits you first.
Okay, so I don't know if we want to start like at the top of the list. The Devils are very high.
They are. Yeah, that is one of the things I did want to talk about.
So we've got their top 3 are the Hurricanes is 1. That makes sense to me. It's maybe overvaluing them a little bit just because they haven't had that playoff success, but I do think they have one of the best rosters in the league.
2 or 3 conferences in a row, though?
Yes.
At some point, they got to break through.
At some point, they have to win a game in those. That's
true.
the thing.
That's true, too.
But I do think they do have a great roster. I've always been a fan of what Carolina's doing. Putting them at number 1 isn't too upsetting. The Devils at 3 is very high. I think they're a great team, but... Man,
one of the things that I did want to point out, because I did pull up an article to go along with these odds. One of the things that they hit on for this is the Devils went from 28th to 3rd and added Tyler Toffoli. That is the biggest addition. If you obviously 28th, I'm assuming is from last year, so obviously they would have made a big jump since last season. So obviously that's not just Tyler Toffoli. But the thing they add at the end here is if they get Connor Hellebuck at or before the deadline, reserve a parade seat. As true as that might be, as of right now, they do not have Connor Hellebuck.
Yes, you can't do it based on what ifs.
Yeah, what ifs you can't do not bet on what ifs. That is the number one thing that you should be learning from this. Do not bet on the Devils because they might get Connor Hellebuck because they also might not.
Yeah,
he could go really anywhere, right?
Unless you have insider information that we don't have.
And if you do, tell me.
Yeah. Unless you've got
because I would like to reserve my parade seat.
Yeah. If you've got the Back to the Future 2 Sports Almanac and the Devils got Connor Hellebuck and went on an 82-0 run to the Stanley Cup, that would be amazing.
Yeah, please let me know. Let me know.
As
Because
of
like
right,
I
as of
have a
right
mortgage
now.
that I would like to put on that. So
Yeah,
just
exactly.
let me know.
It's the kind of thing where it's like, huh, right now that seems a little bit high. The one thing I would say about just looking at these rankings in general, there's a whole lot of teams in the top, like, at least 10 that are, if not extending to like 12, that are very interchangeable. I do think it kind of speaks to the
Yep.
parity in the league and how there is no real favorite. Like, sure, you can
Well,
say
because
Carolina is the front runner,
one of
but
the issues I did have with the Devils, and I mean even the Leafs. I mean I've spoken about my issue with. We did a whole segment on like mainly the reason I wanted to do it was my issues with this new look Leafs team. And I mean, the funny thing is, I'm even scrolling up. You just mentioned the parity in the league. I feel like I would definitely Oilers. I want to say swear words at that, them being at 4, but I will
that's
not. I
high.
will refrain. Yeah, that is high, but I will not use my big
No,
mean words.
but I
think
I like
what I will say is I think that Colorado should be above the Devils. I think Vegas should be above the Devils. I have no past that. I think that Florida is low considering the run they just went on.
Boston too.
But I mean, Boston. Well, Boston did lose Bergeron,
Yes, but they still had the best
which
regular season in
sure,
NHL history.
but losing your number one center can really take
It's
a
true.
punch
It's
in
true.
the gut.
But
Yeah.
falling all the way.
So I
to
don't
10,
they yeah, that's fair. And the Bruins have always been a mainstay for like the last 10 years on being pretty solid in the playoffs. So, I mean, who knows?
they got James
But,
Van Riemsdyk. The Bruins got James Van Riemsdyk since when?
Did they?
I did not know that.
I actually did not know that.
Yeah,
Learn
that's
a new
a
thing every day.
sneaky good addition.
Okay, well, refraining from using all my favorite words, why don't we talk about the Oilers at 4? Like, obviously, you just mentioned that you think they're high. I agree with you, but why do you think they're high?
Okay.
Like, what do you?
I do want to mention that I mean they're that high. Okay, I want to mention a couple things. First, this Bleacher Report article that you pulled up, Simon. Even though they did like I mean I guess it's not them making the ranking. I really like the blurb they put in there. It says Oilers fans claim they've been the second best playoff team for 2 seasons, which is worth precisely nothing. Yeah, that pretty much puts it about right.
Yeah.
But again, the reason they're so high is because of their roster. They have McDavid, they have Draisaitl. Betting against that is difficult. In terms of betting odds, like, and in terms of they're always number one in like.
But one thing
hype.
that they hit right at the end of there. I don't think you read it, but it's all about Jack Campbell and net.
Yeah.
That their goaltending will make or break this next season because obviously the thing is Skinner obviously had a pretty solid season for them last season is in that starter slot. I believe he started in the playoffs as well.
For most of it, yeah.
The thing is we have seen sophomore slumps for goalies are very 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 common, especially for rookie goalies that really really like hit just absolutely kill it in their first season. We've seen that end careers, that sophomore slump. So, as much as I want that to happen to Skinner, who knows? Maybe I'm just, manifesting voodoo. Let's see what happens. But let's say that does happen. How much do you trust Jack Campbell, or even like, well, no, we'll stick to that. How much do you trust Jack Campbell as being your starter on a team like that? Is he really good enough to lead the Oilers to a potential Stanley Cup run?
You know what I would say? I would say yes. But he is good enough to lead the Oilers to the Stanley Cup. We've seen that top end talent, but he's not consistent enough. He has never been consistent. He can put up, even for the Oilers, even in probably his worst season in the league, he still had, when he came in the playoffs, he played really well. I believe he was in net for their, I think it was their comeback victory against the Kings. He played really well.
Yeah,
but the issue is that he is not that player every game. And I know he's just such an up and down guy. To where if they want to have playoff success, you're gonna need him. You're gonna need that luck to hit his peak, And that is even if he's still the starter at that point. Because if something happens like last year where he's in a down stretch for as long as he could be, and Skinner's starting, like, again, you don't want to have that kind of net front uncertainty for a Stanley Cup playoff team.
No, you do not. And I think in the last, obviously, the Stanley Cup winners just won a cup off of Adin Hill. And before the playoffs, he was not really considered much of anything as a goalie past maybe like a mid-tier, low-tier starter. Maybe even high-tier backup, right? I think, so we've seen teams win with lesser goaltending. But the common theme whenever there has been a lesser goaltender is the fact that there's always been really, really solid defense, and you could not make that argument that the Oilers have a pretty good defense. Do they have as good of a defense as Vegas did this season? You would have a hard time convincing me of that.
It's also it's a very offensively focused defensive core too. Like, those defenses that you talk about are good because they give their goalie like a security blanket. It's the security to know that they're not going to get a lot of chances on them because the defense is so good. The Oilers with a core of like Nurse and Ceci as your starting pair, those two, they're good defensemen, more so Nurse than Ceci, but their thing is driving offensive play for both of them. They're not, that first pairing is not going to provide a lot of defensive support. Skinner or Campbell is going to have to face a lot of shots. They're not going to have the kind of protection that a guy like Adin Hill did last season.
No, they are definitely not. If we want to move out of the top five here, I think we already touched on the one other team that I feel like is kind of controversial. I already mentioned is Toronto, but we already did a full segment on them, I think, 2 weeks ago. So I feel like we can move past that and move into the rest of the rankings here a little bit. Obviously, you already mentioned the biggest thing is the fact that it's just such a huge sign of the parity that is in the league right now, like you mentioned. Like, there are a lot of very even odds here as you move into, I'd say until you get to like 10, where it's just a lot of people under, obviously I do not understand gambling, sports betting. I am not a sports gambler, so I do not understand the odds as well as I probably should to be talking about it on a sports show. But I think I can tell that numbers are close to know that it's a very good sign for the direction the league is heading. And I think, the one controversial one in like the top 15 that really sticks out to me, and I want your opinion on this now that the Erik Karlsson trade has gone down. What do you think of 13, the Penguins? What do you think of that?
Well, I don't know. Are they it's not, like, upsetting. There's no team below them that I'm like, okay, that's, like, absurd that they're placed above. It's just, like, I don't know. Sure, maybe this year, fine. The Erik Karlsson move for me, I didn't get to talk about it because I wasn't able to come on the podcast last week. But I did provide my opinion on it when we talked about the potential of it happening. And I said, what's the worst spot for Erik Karlsson to go? Oh, it's Pittsburgh. Because it just feels like it's a wrong move to go to try to add talent on when this team is obviously on the decline. I get like it in terms
at the same time though. What I remember my counter to that even at the time was, what else do you want the Penguins to do? Because they're not going to start cutting off. But are you going to tank when you still have Crosby and Malkin and Letang on the roster?
Trade them.
Yeah, but they don't want to do that. I mean, they're the only reason you're selling any tickets. The ownership is not going to let them trade Crosby.
Yeah, but okay, Simon, think about this. If you're looking at it, like, obviously they're not going to do it. But if you think about team building long term, then
I know you are right
for futures
completely. That is not the argument that I'm making.
In terms of selling tickets, you're going to sell more tickets total if you're back to being a good team in 3 years versus back to being a good team in 10 to 15.
But the thing is, when you have a guy like Crosby, they want to be able to say that Crosby played for the Penguins their entire career. You don't think that's important, but that is important to somebody in that building, and that's why he's still there. It's important to Crosby, too, I'm sure. I think them bringing in Erik Karlsson and bringing in veterans is them saying that they want to see if they can make one more magic run happen. Will it happen? Absolutely, probably not. The funny thing is, I actually like where they are because 13 feels right. I think even when I was talking about it last week and the week before when we were talking about it, I remember last week my prediction for them was a 7th or 8th seed, and 13 would have them sliding in perfectly right into that spot, pretty much. Like, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not in terms of pure talent level that they have on the roster now. I'm not upset about it. It again, it's the more long-term team building thing, and I don't disagree with any of the points you made in terms of why they did it. I just think it's stupid reasoning, and I think it's going to get them in a lot of
I don't.
because
If I was building a team, I would be on your page, like the same thing as you, 100%. Get rid of the old guys. When I'm playing NHL, I trade the old guys, right? Like that's the logical side of it. But there is more. As much as everybody says hockey is a business, basketball is a business, all that, there's also the not necessarily. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see. If you could not convince me that the Penguins are going to trade Crosby. Crosby is going to end his career a Penguin.
I also think it's too. I also think it's too late. I also think it's too late to trade him. Honestly,
that too.
I think they've. If they wanted to do it, they should have done it before.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna okay, if you do, what they're becoming is they're becoming the Red Wings, right? Let me read you out some of the past few Red Wings.
True. Yeah. No. That's fair. That's fair.
So the last winning season they had was 2015-16. After that, they're still okay. They've still got Zetterberg. They're still kind of making the playoffs, but they're fading, right? It's what's going to happen to Pittsburgh in a couple years. They're fading. They're only winning 30 games, 32 games. They're starting to get a losing record, and then the bottom falls out. 17.
I mean, even think about the Flames. Think about the Flames in like the late 2000s, right?
Yes,
it's the same thing. You're holding on to your old stars.
It's a bad philosophy. Erik Karlsson makes it worse because it makes them even more tied down for cap in the future. I don't know, like
that is the one really big negative. Yeah,
Kyle Dubas,
because he has probably, despite winning the Norris, I'd argue he has one of the worst contracts in the league.
Kyle Dubas is like, I don't know why he took that job. It's jumping on a sinking ship, I think, because I think he's gonna have a couple good. Like, I'm not saying the Penguins will do bad this year. They still have a decent lineup, but it's just like, why are you trying to make another push? It just feels a little bit pointless because they don't have like can you see this roster winning a Stanley Cup? That's what it's about. You want to get to winning the Stanley Cup. They have a second round exit at most type of roster, and that's just what's frustrating about it. It's like, am I upset with where they placed odds wise? No, but it's just an overall philosophy that I disagree heavily with, and it's going to cost them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It will cost them. There's absolutely nobody would disagree on that. I think it's a very, very, you would be very wrong if you thought that this was the right move for the future of the Penguins. Is it the right move for the now of the Penguins, considering all things considered? Are they trading Malkin? Absolutely not. Are they trading Letang? Probably not. Are they trading Crosby? It'll be a cold day in hell when that happens. Like, all of these things taken into account, would you rather be mediocre or would you rather trade for guys that would allow you to at least try to compete? Because those are your two options. You are tanking. In this, you got to realize Dubas, Dubas, that's how you say his name, right? All of a sudden, I'm doubting myself. Yeah, okay. You got to realize he got there, even if he wanted to, even if he walked into the ownership's office and said, I want to tank. I want to go get some young guys. We're going to get you guys back contending in 3 years. You know what they would have said to him? No. Like, they would have turned that down instantly. Whether it's the right decision or not doesn't matter, right? That's the thing. So, I don't know. I think you're totally right, but I mean,
yeah,
I think we should move on from the Penguins. I think we've talked enough about the Penguins over the last 3 weeks.
I agree.
But
I'll just move. I don't know if there's the rest of the list. I don't know if it's quite as notable. Just because it's a bunch of middle of the pack teams. Like, I'm not gonna.
Well, we can talk about. We can just
21.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I really appreciate as a Flames fan and how mediocre we are is how we are at exactly 15. That just feels right.
Yeah.
What else? Buffalo at 17. I kind of thought. Yeah, that was weird. But I kind of thought Buffalo should have been higher. Ottawa could have been higher. Because considering, although that just depends on how high you are on their acquisition of Tarasenko. I feel like the Red Wings is another surprising one to me. Who knows what could happen with
Low?
that? I feel like they, yeah, I feel like they should be higher a little.
I don't
I
think
feel like
so.
I'd put the Red Wings.
It's
Well,
just
actually, they're tied with the
The
Blues
Canucks
and
do
Predators,
feel high.
I guess.
I just said I wouldn't get mad about the Canucks, but they do feel high. Looking at these other
Yeah,
teams.
like what I mean is like I feel like I'd swap like the Red Wings and probably the Canucks.
The other thing, Simon, you do have to look about, because this isn't just a power rankings, it is odds. So they will rank certain teams
True.
ahead of other teams, but that doesn't mean, like, the Devils and Leafs are technically tied for second with the same odds. That adds
Yeah, which is what I was
tied.
looking at. Yeah,
And I
like
think one of
basically
the,
all I'm saying when I say that is that I think they should probably move one spot up. But it's just the fact that I cannot imagine betting on the Canucks over the Red Wings.
just look at
Not-
the
Like,
look at the gap, especially at those odds. So I think the
Yeah.
interesting stuff in this ranking honestly comes from the gaps between teams. So you said there's a pretty clear top 11 or so. Yeah, because the rankings for the Red Wings plus 200 versus the Kings plus 2800. There's a big gap there.
Yeah.
And then you've got those dark horses kind of ranked in together. Another big drop off starting at the Senators and going.
yeah.
Until you got to the Canucks, and there's another big
One
drop
thing.
off from the Canucks to the Blues.
One thing that I really want to end this off with. Would you, and this goes back to how, one thing that I thought, because we were looking at odds, which is something that you just pointed out, and I think that's a very important thing to look at. How many people do you think are going to put money on the 20,000 odds for the Chicago Blackhawks?
More than they should,
Yeah.
because
Like, I'm
it's
really
not gonna
curious.
happen.
I can't wait till we get to like September and it comes. I see the TSN Instagram post that Drake put $200,000 on Chicago to win the cup or something stupid like that. Like I can't wait because it's gonna happen. It is. I predict it because with those odds, like it's not going to happen. Like the funny thing is they have just as good of a chance as Arizona or the Flyers or whatever, less than the Flyers obviously. Like. But the fact that they got Connor Bedard, there's going to be people who are going to be like, ooh, they just might. They won't.
Such a terrible roster.
It is absolutely horrendous. But imagine, I'm not talking about what will happen. I'm talking about like just the fact that people will bet on that. There is going to be people who will put obscene amounts of money on that. Like. Because they should be just as bad as Arizona, Anaheim. They should be at 25,000 too for odds. There's no reason. The only reason they have that like 5,000 less is Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
Like they are just as bad as the rest of those teams, if not worse. I've heard people saying that they don't think Arizona will be as bad this year. Like I think that Arizona probably should be in front of Chicago.
The Ducks could be better too.
Ducks too. That's a very good point. Yeah. Like there are teams here that like should be above Chicago, but the only reason they're not is because of a very special boy who got drafted first overall, who's going to take over the league in his first year, because every rookie does that, right? It's like
This is how odds
I
draw
don't
you
know.
in. There's discrepancies based
I
on
don't know.
people overvaluing things, and then you look at it.
Yep.
and it's
I mean,
oh,
hey.
it's not that bad of
Hey.
a deal.
Hey, I'd put $5 on it. I won't, but I would. If I was a betting man, I would put like $5 on that, and you know, if when that cold day in hell shows up, I'll be a very happy man. But I mean, past that, yeah, like the rest of this, yeah, there's not much left to talk about there. I just wanted to touch on Chicago because I think that's an interesting thing. I'm curious how that's going to turn out. I hope some people are dumb enough to put some money on Chicago.
Oh, they will be. It's betting. Everybody is dumb.
True. That's fair. Unless you watch the Trick Play podcast, then you're a smart bettor. Everybody else that sucks, yeah.
Yeah.
As we reach the doldrums of the NHL offseason, news and rumors kind of dying down, as it is with pretty much every sport at this point, we'll look into some players in hockey who get a little bit less love, a little bit less appreciation, but the game wouldn't be as fun without them. That is, of course, our enforcers. We're looking at a few guys like Ryan Reeves, like our Tom Wilsons, the guys who aren't afraid to drop the gloves and get into it. The Hockey News recently put out a list about their top 5 fighters. in the
Yeah.
league, given some.
I think we should break this
honorable mentions
down
as well.
player by player as well.
Okay.
We should
So
break this
I don't-
down player by player.
I don't know if
I
you
want
want to
do that.
start with.
That'll be fun.
I don't know if you want to start with the honorable mentions, Simon. Break
We
those
probably
down. We've got a
should.
few.
Yeah. Yeah, we got Tanner Ginot. I'm not sure if I said that name right. I don't know how to say his last name, to be fair. And then Matthew Oliver? Okay, these are names I'm not recognizing. Darnell Nurse. It could be Olivier, like Olivier. Like, could be like a
Olivier?
French last name, which is Olivier. That's what I was thinking. That's the one reason. Those are two last names that I'm not too sure on. I've only read those. So if I said those wrong, boohoo, cry me a river. But anyway, I don't think knowing who the number 5 big boy is, I don't think I have an issue with any of those. I think all of those guys would probably get their shit slapped by number 5, number 4, number 3, or number 2, or number 1. So I think that's pretty fair. I don't think that's a controversial. Any of those guys are controversial. They probably fall right outside of the top 10, or right outside of the top 5. Sorry. I don't know about you. I don't disagree with any of those.
The honorable mentions. Nurse is interesting. He does he gets in more fights than you'd think. I think that's the one that's like
Nurse.
That's an interesting one.
Nurse can kill. Nurse can. Yeah, he can swing. But compared to the guy who's number 5.
Okay, I actually have an opinion on this.
I know who I'd be betting on.
I will disagree with you heavily, Simon, for number 5. I think.
Really?
I want to hear your opinion.
Just on okay, well we can move on. Number 5, Milan Lucic. He did not fight very much with the Flames.
Yes.
That is the one thing. He did not get in many fights. But I think part of that is the fear. Because I think a lot of people are very scared of Lucic, and they probably should be, because that dude could throw haymakers. When I first read the headline for this, before I'd even clicked on it, I thought Lucic would be higher. He does not fight as much as necessarily the guy named above him, but I think having him, he needs to be on this list. Even though he doesn't fight as much, he needs to be. He is a mainstay in the enforcers of the league, the power forwards of the league of the last decade. When you think of a guy who is terrifying, he is the boogeyman. He is the guy who you have nightmares about playing before. You think of Lucic. You think of a guy like Lucic. You think of a lot of names on here, but I think Lucic has to be on here. I think I know where you're going to take it and why you wanted me to open this with this, because I think I know where you're going to take it, so I'll let you talk about all that. But I definitely think that you cannot make the argument to me that Lucic does not deserve to be on this list.
I don't think he does. Okay, this is, again, my argument is basically what you brought up. The fact that he doesn't fight a lot with the Flames. But I think you have to put that in perspective in terms of just how little he fought. Because he is the Flames'
Did you pull up how many fights he was in?
Yes. He was only in 3 this entire last season. Let me name you some players with either the same or more amount of fights as Milan Lucic. Matthew Tkachuk got in the same amount of fights. TJ Oshie, same amount of fights.
I believe that.
Jujhar Khaira on the Oilers, same amount of fights. Erica Branson, same amount of fights. We're going up the list. We're going to players with more. JT Miller fought more, who we don't think is too much of a fighter. Nick Foligno fought more. Connor Mackey fought more.
The thing is,
it's like we're continuing to go up. We got Jacob Trouba fought more. Jamie Alexiak, Yanni Gord fought more. I'm getting up the list, and I'm thinking.
Yeah, but okay. But out of all of those names, would you actually, if in a fight, would you pick any of those names to beat Lucic in a fight?
I wouldn't, but I just don't think. Okay.
Exactly.
No. I don't think you deserve a spot on this list if you never utilize that talent. In the Dome podcast has made this point. Part of the reason why Lucic is so disappointing, because we can joke about it all you want, but he's so disappointing, and part of the reason is he's never living up to that enforcer status. He's never actually dropping the gloves to protect the home player.
But the difference is we're not talking about the best enforcers. We're talking about the best fighters. So the guys who win fights. That's the way I'm looking at it. So I'm thinking of quality over quantity here. When Lucic fights, he kicks ass, and that's why he deserves to be on this list. People don't want to fight him. The biggest the funny thing is I feel like
fights, though. I've seen him duck fights. man, it's not just that everybody's scared of him. He's also, I feel like he's just scared that he's not what he used to be. Like, I don't know.
Sure.
And a lot of these guys
Yeah.
that he's fighting in this season,
I feel like
a lot of these guys he's fighting in the season are in
interrupt.
this top 5. Like, it's other people picking fights with him too. Out of the 3 that he fought this year, 2 of them are in the top 5 of this list. It's like, I don't know, man.
Well, that's the thing.
Skill
like
there, but he's not. I need to see more. I don't know.
Sure. But I just think, and trust me, I do agree with you. He should be fighting more. That's not the argument I'm making. I'm just making the argument I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit. I totally just think like on the standard of just like best fighters of like if we're ranking this not on who fights the most, not who's we're talking about boogeymen. We're talking about guys that if I have to drop the gloves, I do not want to be across from that guy, no matter how much he fights, right? Because you got to think of like I'd put like back when Chara was in the league. Chara was in like next to no fights, and do you want to know why? Because he was 6'9". Nobody wanted to touch him. Like it's that type of thing where like I'm looking at it like that. I'm looking at it as guys who like you do not want to square off against, and I think Lucic perfectly fits that. I think giving him the 5, even just like as a ceremonial kind of thing, I feel like feels right because he can swing, he can take people's heads off, like so I have no issue with it personally. Even though I agree with like everything you're saying, he should fight more. He should be more of an enforcer. He needs to be he needs to go back to doing what he used to truly fit it like well. But he still deserves to be here because obviously the players voted him there for a reason, right? Nobody wants to fight him, right? Like, so I don't know. I have no issue with him at 5, but we should probably move on to 4 because I feel like we'll just sit here talking about Luch for like the next
I just want to bring up one more thing. Like, he's had a lot more seasons with the Bruins, obviously. But he fought 55 times with the Bruins and only 18 for his time in Calgary. That's where my issue is, and I know like you acknowledged the point, and I get where you're coming from too. Like you wouldn't want to take him on in a fight. I just don't think it's fair to other people who are fighting more to put him ahead, just because like he's fighting
quality over quantity
as about a league average rate. Yeah, but if you're not,
but it goes this Caleb. You're not gonna understand this reference at all, but I will bring it up anyway. It's the MMA argument of in the UFC, the guy who has the most wins is all of a sudden I'm blanking on his name, but he has never won a championship. I don't know if he's ever beat a top 5 fighter, but he has just been a mainstay in the UFC because he'll win a fight, lose a fight, win a couple, lose. Like he'll never win enough to make it to the top, but he'll constantly beat people, and he's been along for so long that he just has the record for the most wins. But is he a Hall of Famer? No. Probably not. Like that is an argument that has been like a big conversation in MMA in the last couple of months since he had his last win and got the record. Is he a Hall of Famer just because he has the record for most wins? Or is the fact that it's quantity over quality a little bit harder to really make that argument? And I think I kind of am just bringing that like fighting logic into this where like I'm looking at it as quality over quantity. I keep saying that, but I'm going to keep saying it because I think it's important. I think that Lucic, I'm curious what his record is in fights. Do people keep record? Like how many... Did he lose any of the fights? Any of the 3 fights?
Okay, to be fair, I am no. So I'm looking at a site
like that's what I mean.
This does go for you.
Yeah.
So in his 3 fights, they have again take this with a grain of salt because it is a fan vote, but the fans will determine who wins the fight. His 3 fights. First one, Curtis McDermott. He had 97% of the vote. Matthew Olivier. He had 92% of the vote. And Ian Cole, he had 89% of the vote. He is winning.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like, there's a reason nobody wants to fight him because he wins. He wins. It's the same reason why he is what in MMA we call the gatekeeper. The guy who keeps everybody out of the top 5, isn't quite good enough to win the championship, but nobody beside the champion can beat him. That is what Lucic is. Nobody, and they don't fight a lot because the funny thing is, when you are given an option between fighting the gatekeeper or fighting a guy who is newer to the top 5 or maybe just whatever, what have you, you're not going to choose the gatekeeper. You're going to choose the easier fight, right? That's the way that I look at it. I look at Lucic deserves to be here for that reason. This is. I thought we'd be over the list in 10 minutes. I'm actually happy we're having an actual conversation about this. This is fun. But yeah, no, I think Luch deserves to be there because I'm curious what his overall record in his career. I feel like I'll look into that after the podcast because I'm just curious about it. But
I was looking pretty far down, and it was hard to find a loss. You get about 5 fights in until you get to his first loss against Curtis McDermott, who is in this top 5, one spot above him. If we
and
want to
who is number
4.
4.
Yeah.
Like, I'll literally just read what it says here because I feel like this article will probably do a better service to him than I will. But entering his 3rd season with the Abs, McDermott is a veteran fighter who ranked as high as 3rd in balloting here. His dance card was more about quality over quantity. That's my big thing. With opponents such as Patrick Maroon and 2 tilts with Luch. That's the thing that's really important to me. I think, like I said, quality over quantity, as long as that's there, I'm good. I have no issue with it. I think that he deserves to be on this list. I think he deserves to be 4. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. And again, like, I this is where I can see your argument more. Like, Curtis McDermott feels right on this list. He does have the same amount of fights as Lucic. I think it's more of my Flames fan like frustration over the fact that Lucic wasn't as much of an enforcer.
No, trust me. I'm looking at it. To be fair, I think the only reason that me and you have differing opinions is because I come with the perspective of somebody who watches MMA and boxing, where like I can look at it more as just the fight instead of the outside what have you, right? Like I'm taking the hockey out of it. I'm looking at it as just fighting, right? Which I think kind of allows me to kind of, the perspective is a little bit easier to kind of see it, which is why it's easy for me to see Luch there because it's just like, yeah, it makes sense. Who would want to touch him? Like, and McDermott falls into the same thing. He kicks ass. He fights. He wins.
Yeah, he does do it more than Luch. Like 5 this season versus 3 for Luch. But yeah, like I do get your argument. For me, McDermott, like I think he's in the right place. Just as a Flames fan, this doesn't surprise me looking at teams fought against. The Flames are his 2nd most with 4. A couple of those are against Luch.
Yeah.
That's why as a Flames fan, like when I see him in the lineup,
I think part of it for Luch as well, though, and I've kind of had this opinion for a while. I think Luch, it's not necessarily that he's scared. I think he just doesn't like to fight people that he thinks would be too easy. I think there's a little bit of that. Luch, I think he has a bit of an ego to him. You know what I mean? Like I think if he's looking across and a guy wants to fight him and Luch is like, I will take you down in 2 fights, he's not dropping his gloves. Right?
Honestly,
I think that's part of it. Because like look at who he wants to fight. Look at who he's fought.
Back it up. Stats back it up. I was just gonna say it's McDermott. We're gonna go through this list and it's gonna be people we've already said. McDermott, Olivier, who is an honorable mention, Ian Cole, Mark Barecki, who is also a fighter.
Could be Ian Cole could be up there.
Giovanni
Smith. He's also a guy.
Giovanni Smith shows up a lot on these lists. McDermott again, Delorier, who I think is in the top 5. Like all of these guys, Delorier twice, Giovanni Smith again. The stats back you up.
Like I think Luch picks his fights, and he's not picking easy fights.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the one thing. I think to that point, that's why Luch deserves to be there. It's because it's like I said, quality over quantity. I will keep hammering that because I think that's so important when you're looking at something like fighting, especially in a sport like hockey. I am going to, if you are telling me about matching up 2 guys, because that's the way I'm looking at it. Like, I'm looking at it, honestly, the only reason that McDermott, like, because I could be wrong here, but I think last season Luch beat McDermott twice, right? So a little bit of that makes...
It was 1-1. It was 1-1.
Was it? Oh, okay, never mind.
It was, well...
Forget what I was even going to say. I'm okay with him being in 4. But, like... That's the only reason that part of me was like, I thought Luch won both. So a little bit of me was like, you can move Luch up there. But
no,
we should move on. We should go through these. I'll let you read the next guy's name.
Thanks, Simon. The Habs fans like to call this guy Wi-Fi because his name looks like a Wi-Fi password. Arbor Zekaj.
Yep.
So Arbor Zekaj.
I actually didn't know how to say his name.
New to, I'm pretty sure that's right. New to the league.
Sounds right.
Again, I'm looking at these fight stats. It's a little bit more of, again, what you were saying with Luch picking his opponents. I'm not upset about it because, again, this is his first season. It makes sense why he wouldn't be fighting the top dogs, but he still does. I'm still seeing names like Zach Cassian, Olivier Delorier.
Yeah, I was about to say Cassian because I do remember that fight.
And like he's winning a lot of these. I have not clicked on any of these voting results where it seems like he's lost the fight yet. And he has the quantity too. He has 9. So 3 might seem high for a player in his first year. But he's putting up the stats to prove it. It's the kind of thing like until he's beaten. I haven't seen one yet. Oh, here's one, Delorier. Yeah. Delorier beat him up pretty good, but other than that, he has a pretty sterling.
And record. That's a good transition as well if we want to move into Delorier because he's number 2. So.
And Delorier is quantity. He's quantity.
Yeah, he's quantity. He's quantity, yeah, for sure.
Because he also is quality. Yeah, again, he's winning fights, but he's also driving them.
He's winning fights, but he's taking fights. Yeah, he's winning fights and taking fights. And where else would he be playing but Philly? Where else?
Free bullies.
Damn right. I think he definitely could be number 1 on this list if it wasn't for one person who is a very unsurprising number 1. But I think, quality. You mentioned that he has he's more quantity, which is definitely true. He had the most fights this season, but he also has quality. So, and he beat the number 3 guy.
He's still beating up on players who who like Tanner Janot.
So
Ryan Reeves versus Delorier fight. So not to spoil the number 1. But this will be an interesting.
Yeah, not to watch. Oh, big spoiler. Not to spoil Star Wars, but did you know that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father? I know. That and Ryan Reeves is number 1 on this list. Those are like the 2 biggest spoilers ever, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like it's interchangeable. 1 or 2. You can. I don't care. You can put 1 or 2. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But no. Ryan Reeves number 1 makes sense. Move on.
Yep. Watching this fight
One thing I did appreciate is that the fact that Tom Wilson is on here, because I had a funny feeling when I first clicked it that Tom Wilson would be on here, but he loses fights, so I don't have an issue with that.
He's more of an instigator than he is a fighter.
Yeah.
This Ryan Reeves.
So it's the same reason why it's the same reason why I'm happy like Kachuk isn't on there. I didn't think Kachuk would be, but it's the same argument, right? Like there's a difference between a fighter and an instigator.
Yeah, I do think Kachuk is more of an instigator too.
This for sure.
If you guys are more interested in this subject, this Ryan Reeves Delorier fight, January 26, 2023, between the number 1 and number 2 on the list, very even. Ooh. Very even. Nobody gets taken down. I'm sure. Very back and forth. The voting results are pretty split. Reeves got 50%, Delorier got 10%, but also 40% of people thought it was a draw, which I think is fair.
No, I'm not shocked. Can I end this off by giving my favorite hockey fight ever, I think? Which is it's a very biased pick. I think I
know what you're gonna say.
And the funny thing is it's against the Flames. It's in Iginla's last year. He was playing on the LA Kings, and he fought Englund. Derek Englund. Such a good fight. That is probably my favorite hockey fight ever, I think.
Yeah.
I think you could throw like a couple goalie fights in there just for the novelty, but I think the one that I'll occasionally, when I'm bored, I've gone back and watched that fight. That's a good one. If you haven't watched that fight, I'm not even talking about the Flames bias. I'm saying the Flames bias is there because it's probably the only reason I've seen it, because obviously it's between Derek Englund, who in his prime, he was a pretty damn good fighter, and Iggy, who was in his prime a very good fighter back then, but obviously in his last season, he had hardly fought back then. Like near the end of his career, he hardly fought. I think that was his last career fight.
It was indeed his
could be
last.
wrong on
It
that,
was
but I think it
indeed
was.
his last career fight.
I don't even know. I think it was a very even fight from what I remember.
I'm
I need to go back
watching
and
it right now. It is very even.
It is a hell of a fight.
It is very much.
It is a fun fight to watch.
Aginla, like it's crazy how much he's
It's
holding.
vintage Aginla.
He is.
Oh yeah, that's the crazy thing of it. It is vintage Aginla.
Aginla is just out staminaing him. So like, yeah, I just finished watching that fight.
Yeah, pretty much.
England is trying to get punches in, but just because of how good Aginla's position
Iggy
is.
was a hell of a fighter. Go watch. You know what? Another one. Go watch Iggy versus. Jamie Benn. Yeah. Go watch that. That's another good one. Although Iggy kicks his ass, so that's maybe why I like it more. But you know.
Aginla, yeah.
That's another good one. But we can end it there. I just wanted to throw out those. I don't know if you have a favorite fight, but that's mine personally.
Oh, favorite
I think there's.
fight. Oh.
I think all mine would be Aginla fights, though. To be fair.
Oh, who was that guy?
That and.
Who was that guy on the Flames in like 2015, 2016 who was an enforcer? Oh, freaking Brian McGrattan.
Furland?
Brian McGrattan.
McGrattan. Oh, yeah, there's a couple of good McGrattan ones, yeah.
Yeah, that was...
McGrattan was awesome.
That I don't know if I have a fight, but I just remember being at a game where he, like... I feel like he knocked someone out on the Oilers. Like, that was a pretty...
Oh, I'm sure.
That was a pretty good fight.
That, and if we're just counting, I think one of the craziest experiences I've ever had watching a hockey game was watching the Canucks Flames line brawl whenever that happened. That was one of the craziest scenes I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
As a hockey fan, because like there was so much. I don't know if you had the pleasure of watching that live, Caleb, but I can say that was one of the craziest things ever because it was all happening so quickly. Because like. Everybody was fighting on the ice. John Tortorella was like trying to jump into the Flames bench. Like it was nuts. That was an awesome. That's another thing. Anybody watching this, you have homework. Go watch the two Aginla fights, Aginla versus England and Aginla versus Ben. Go watch the Canucks Flames line brawl, although I feel like that's a more popular one. Although I know a lot of people have seen the Jamie Benn Aginla fight too. That's a common favorite fight, I think, even outside of Flames fans, because that's a really good one. But Derek Engelland versus Aginla is my cult favorite pick that I feel like not a lot of people would have known about. So go watch that one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Also,
yeah, we can end it there.
Yeah, also rewatch the Battle of Alberta goalie fight because like that's such a chalky pick for
Very true.
For favorite, but
Yeah.
like it's there for a reason. It's amazing. So watch it.
It's a good fight. Yeah, Mike Smith kicks his ass, but it's still good.
Yeah, but it's. Still,
I mean, I think Cam Talbot knew what was going to happen when he skated up.
All respect to Cam Talbot for trying.
Oh yeah. No, I think everybody knew what was going to happen there. Mike Smith is kind of just that guy when it comes to goalie fights.
Has Mike Smith gotten in?
Definitely.
Has he gotten in any other fights? Has he gotten in any other fights? He must have. Oh, guess okay. This is
previously in his career.
This is your question. How many fights? Okay, that's kind of lame. How many fights do you think he's gotten in?
It's not many, but he's been in a couple.
Yeah, so he's been.
My guess would probably be like 3 or 4.
Yeah, he's been in. So if you count his whole career, including like AHL, then it's 4. He's had 2 in the NHL.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. Yeah, because with goalies that they just don't fight as much. But I know Mike Smith was, when it comes to goalie fights, he generally does pretty well for himself. So
the fact that
another one is Hextall. And Vernon he fought a couple times. He fought Brodeur. It's a good one,
bro. Ooh, I did not know that. That might be part of my homework.
That's one that I owe. Those we could talk about like favorite hockey fights forever. I feel like I could probably just like name drop like a crap ton. Aginla and Le Cavalier. Yeah, Stanley Cup Finals 2004.
That's what I thought you were gonna say when you said your favorite fight.
Yeah, that's what I figured you thought I was gonna say. Yeah, but no, my favorite one just for the, and of course there is because Aginla's my favorite player of all time. I have a bobblehead of him, which is absolutely sick, and I love it. I'll even show it. Or not a bobblehead. It's like I don't know what these things are called. What are they called? Funko Pop. I have an Aginla Funko Pop. It's very cool. I'm showing up I am an adult with action figures.
As we all should be.
I'm very proud of it. So. As we all should be, damn straight. Anyway, we can move on. I've been saying that for 5 minutes. We should do it.
Thank you, everybody, so much for watching the Trick Play podcast. If you enjoyed what you saw, watched, heard today, make sure to check us out on all platforms. We got stuff on YouTube. I think we're now up on Apple Podcasts. So if you were looking for us on Apple Podcasts,
that's true,
and couldn't find us before, good news. Simon.
That's because Simon's lazy.
Simon was lazy, but he is not anymore, and put it up. So
yeah,
all those Apple Podcasts homies can go look over there.
We got you.
Still got it on Spotify. Still got an Instagram. Still got a TikTok. So follow us everywhere if you can. That would be much appreciated.
We can now officially say I think that we are everywhere. We are absolutely everywhere. We have a Twitter as well. I don't know if I've announced that on the actual podcast.
We do have a Twitter.
We do have a Twitter.
We do have a Twitter.
Yeah, we have a Twitter now. So we have pretty much everything.
We are
so like
pretty
you
much,
look us up, you'll find it.
Pretty much everywhere. I mean, if you ask to find us on like Tidal, then we're gonna say no.
Yeah, like don't check MySpace. Well, maybe. We'll see how I feel.
Trick Play MySpace account coming up soon.
Coming soon.
Okay.
Yeah, damn right.
You know what? Speaking of social media, okay, I'll give my one. I like ending it out with a shout out. I'm gonna do an anti shout out to end it off. We're saying we have a Twitter. We don't have a Twitter. We have an X account. Why was Twitter renamed to X? That is the dumbest decision in the history of branding.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
I'll read one second. If you can give me a second, I'll go back to the tweet that I said because I was proud of this tweet. So I'm gonna read it out loud. So I don't tweet very often on my own personal account because I like scrolling through Twitter, but I don't tweet very often. To promote one of our podcast episodes right when it got switched to X, what I said was, I figure I should be tweeting on here more, so I'll start by saying there's a new episode of Trick Play out now, and that I like Twitter more when it wasn't named after the place that pirates bury treasure.
Yep.
And I think that that's something that I stand by. I think that it should still be Twitter. That is very stupid. I agree with you. I can fully say I have stopped using Twitter as much because I don't like the logo. It's not as fun to click on anymore. I like clicking on the bird.
Yeah. And like Twitter was such a big thing that tweeting is a verb. We still say people are tweeting things. What are you gonna say? We're Xing?
What did I just call it? Yeah, what did I just call it when I pulled up my tweet?
You said
it's a tweet.
It's a tweet. It's not an X. So to end off the podcast, Elon Musk, do better. You just backed out of your fight with Zuckerberg, and now you're changing the name of the platform you bought for like an infinity.
That's even more disappointing than the fact that he changed the name. I wanted to see Zuck versus Elon. That would have been such a fun fight. That I would have absolutely ate that up.
And now Elon is backing out because he's too ashamed of his stupid Bird app failing. Hey, not even Bird app.
I will say it. Look me in the eyes. I will say it right now. This is a promise. If that fight somehow still happens, I will do a full 30-minute breakdown of the entire fight. I will do it. It'll be the worst boxing you have ever seen in your life. It'll be terrible, everything across the board. Terrible wrestling, terrible boxing. And I will laugh it up the whole time, but I will love it. And I will do a full 30-minute breakdown of it. So, Elon, you know what?